Hello, everyone. Welcome to Let's Talk It Over. My name is Monica Brinkman, and with me today is our wonderful, wonderful co-host, Mr. Kenneth Weene.
Hi, Monica. How are you?
Yeah. Well, Ken, I'm good, but I want to do something today.
Okay.
And something that we don't do that often. I want to let people know what's going on with you. I've known you for quite a few years now, and I've read almost everything you've written. And being an author and someone who's read their entire life, I think I'm a pretty good judge on what good material is. And I've never been disappointed with your writings. Don't know many people I have said that about. Now, he's probably blushing, folks. But tell us what's going on with you. I understand you've got like 2-3 things going on right now.
Yeah, I have 3 books coming out in the near future. The first one, since it's from our mutual publisher, All Things That Matter Press, and I always love to plug them.
Yes, they're wonderful.
Yeah, I co-authored a memoir with a gentleman from South Sudan. He is one of what we call the Lost Boys. And it's really a pretty great story, terrifying, horrifying story, but a good one. And I suggested to Deng, that's his name, Deng Tem, that he send it to All Things That Matter Press, and they immediately accepted it.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, and it's going to be coming out soon. It's called Jump the Ram. And, you know, I have to tell you, folks, this is kind of interesting because it's brought me into contact with some very fascinating people like Anderson Cooper. That Anderson Cooper, the CNN guy. Yeah. It turns out he and Deng, and it's in the book how they met, but they met in Kenya many years ago. And the funny thing is that Anderson Cooper came out to Phoenix, Arizona a couple of years ago to accept an award from the Cronkite School at Arizona State. And Deng was in the audience, and he sent up a note. You know, he didn't get a chance to say, and he just sent up a little note saying something. And then he left, and Anderson sent his assistant running after Deng to drag him back. Now, he hadn't seen him for years, but he just remembered him. And Anderson shares some of that and what was going on in the world at that time. Then another person who's written a piece for the book is another journalist who's famous in Europe. And then one of the people who was running the foreign affairs of South Sudan. I mean, we're talking, it's funny because, I've gotten to meet some very interesting people. I'm supposed to be meeting one of the U.S. senators soon. I won't say who, because until their office announces it, I shouldn't, but
yes.
They're
let us know if that happens.
They're interested in. So it's pretty cool, and it's called Jump the Ram, and it's going to be coming out. We don't have the date yet. I'm going to guess probably sometime in like August or September is my guess.
What's it about? Just, I know it's about a lot, but if you
it's a memoir, and he it starts with him in the villages. It starts with him when he's a very little child.
Ooh.
And with his father and in the village life, and I don't want to ruin it.
No.
And then these Arab marauders come down to steal the cows and other livestock and whatever from the Denka in that area. And he ends up fleeing. He's a little boy. He's like 7, 8 years old. He walks the length of South Sudan.
Oh, my word.
Ethiopia.
Yeah.
He is then in the camps. And there are parts of this book that are just, oh my God, unbelievable. There's one point where he's almost eaten by a crocodile. There's another point. The most poignant thing is when he is in one of the camps and an adult friend of his dies. And the ground is very swampy and wet. And so the bodies keep kind of coming up, and the jackals and the lions are evidently, in addition to preying, they will eat carrion. And they would come and pull this guy's body up, and every morning Deng would go out to rebury his friend.
Oh.
And so it gets pretty hairy, and
I'd be crying at that.
Well, there is a lot to cry about in this book. There's also a lot to cheer about.
Now, was that going on like when we were younger, and
yes.
Everybody was saying, "Hey, you need to support Ethiopia"?
No, we were not supporting Ethiopia at that point.
That was later, huh?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just my friends. I don't know.
But then they got kicked out of Ethiopia, and then he's in Kenya. Then he's back in South Sudan, then in Kenya, and then he comes to the United States, and it's quite a story. And then, of course, now he has gone back and he visits his father. His mother's died, but he visits his father and friends, and so this is a very powerful memoir about dealing, among other things, dealing with PTSD, but also being a child soldier, dealing with death. I mean, it's like, oh my God. And I had the great honor of working with Deng on this book. And as I said, I've gotten to meet some pretty interesting people, and it's a good read. The next one. I can't
imagine you collaborating with anyone and not having it be a good read.
Well, thank you.
I'm not saying this because we do a show together, Ken. I would just be quiet if I didn't mean it.
Well, the next one is another collaboration. Okay, coming out.
Congratulations on that. I'm so glad it was accepted.
The next one is another collaboration. It's coming out, I think probably it will be out early June. And that's called The Rightful King. And it's a stage play.
Wow.
And I co-wrote it with my dear friend from Nigeria, Umar Abdul. Umar is a playwright there and a teacher of theater in one of the state-owned universities, colleges. And he and I met on social media. I'd love to get him on the show, and if and when he can get a decent Skype connection, we'll do that.
Oh, we have to have him on.
Yeah. He and I have talked on Skype, but mostly we work together by emails, and we have talked on the phone, which is prohibitively expensive. Anyway, this is our second play. The first one, Ashes, was published by a small company in Africa. But this one, The Rightful King, is being published by Cyberwit. Cyberwit is a major publishing house in India. And they discovered me recently. And I asked them.
Nice to have that happen.
Yeah, well, I'll get to that story in a minute. The story, go on. I'm doing reverse order here. So I asked them, as part of that discovery process, if they'd look at The Rightful King, because it's a really cool story. It's kind of based in traditional Nigerian folklore, but it deals with issues of modern politics.
Oh.
And it's kind of it's a cool play, I think. And we're just hoping that by getting it published by somebody that has a presence in the English-speaking world, that Cyberwit does, that's going to help us find some companies to produce it. Because we just think it's really exciting to help make the world more aware of the arts and the lives and everything from other countries, other societies, other cultures.
And we're so lucky to be able to do that, in this time. I guess the internet just opened it up so much.
Yeah. But you know, there's something to this that is a little bit kind of yes and no. The internet has opened it up. If you want to meet people and actually learn about them and get to know them, yeah, it opens it up. Otherwise, you really don't understand what's going on in the arts from another place. And so,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, working with Umar has been fascinating for me, but also like for this play, he wrote a small glossary, so people can better understand why would you use this word or why would you use that? And what does it represent? And I got interested in that, and that's something else I'm working on and hoping I'm going to be able to bring to fruition, is an idea for a streaming service. Hopefully like Netflix or Prime or somebody will pick it up, in which we have discussions of the art so that people can actually understand what they're seeing. And this came out of a very interesting thing that happened with my friend Deng, again, the South Sudanese who wrote the memoir, Jump the Ram. Deng sent me a short movie that a friend of his had made. And it's in Denka, but they added some English to subtitles so I could at least understand the gist of it. And I watched it and I said to Deng, I don't get it as an American, but from what I've learned about you, isn't he raping her there? And he said, yes. He said, but you know that. I said, yeah, but you can't show this to an American audience. They won't understand that that's the equivalent.
Right.
There's no sex. It's not like he's on top of her. It's a wholly symbolic.
I see.
And so that gave me this idea that what we really need is more, not just to show the art, but also to explain the art. Why is this symbol? What does it mean? Why is this so taboo? Things like that.
And we learn so much about each other's culture.
Right.
And that would bring us closer together with a much deeper understanding. I think that's an excellent idea. I hope that works out.
Well, I hope it does. And supposedly there's somebody who's thinking about financing it. And the funny thing is that it isn't going to take that much to finance because the art is there. I mean, it may not be exquisitely performed because there may not be money, but like if I took a play, whether it's the one of the two that Umar and I have co-authored or one of his others or some other Nigerian play, and said to him, let's get your students to perform this, the cost of doing that and having a decent quality video made wouldn't be that high. Getting somebody to sit on a Skype call or a Zoom call and discussing it and talking about it so we could film that wouldn't be that high. And once it's up on a streaming service, it costs nada for the streaming service, basically. So to do this, we're not talking about millions of dollars, at least to start. We're talking about a relatively small amount where somebody explains the key of this is this scene, because in that scene, that's the equivalent of raping her. And this is why it's the equivalent of raping her. Okay? And then all of a sudden, you're thinking about that culture. You're thinking about the differences in culture, and you're thinking about ideas. Now, of course, as a shrink, and a psychoanalytically oriented shrink, that's always been my preoccupation, is understanding my characters, the world, my culture, other cultures, myself, mostly myself, which brings us to my third book, which is coming out hopefully like tomorrow or something. It may already be out by the time we get this up. It's called Coursing, Coursing, and it's going to be on Amazon available, and it's from that company in India, Cyberwit. And here's this great story. They contacted me, and they said, we'd like to do a book of your poetry. I never heard. I didn't know them. Okay, I mean, here's some company, Indian.
Because you're good.
Well, yeah, but so I call up my very dear friend. Oh no, actually, I emailed her. I guess my very good friend Cynthia Hogue, who's been on the show. Cynthia's a world-renowned poet,
Yes.
and I said, Cynthia, have you ever heard of these people? She says, oh yeah. She says, a couple of my other friends have had them bring up books. They're really good. I said, well, what? How would they have heard of me? She says, obviously, you're getting an international reputation, Ken.
That's wonderful.
Okay. Right.
You deserve it, though. And I know.
Yeah.
I've watched Ken. He doesn't just write. Let me tell you,
So let me tell
he's
you
been
about
involved in helping so many other people, even through this show. Who else reads a book before they have a guest on? Not that many.
Yeah. So let me tell you about the book.
All right.
Coursing. It's a book of poetry. Okay. But it's my unique poetry. It's about I guess you could say it's almost a psychoanalytic approach to poetry. I see poetry as a way of exploring self, not just through free association, but actually exploring self. And that includes my cultural background. My background as an American Jew. It includes my PTSD from my childhood. The issues of my parents brought to the table.
Yeah.
As well as my understanding of life and my sensitivity to others. And I'm hoping that we'll get a response to Coursing and that people will want copies of the book. And I guess what we're going to do, Monica, is as these books come out, we're going to be putting links to them.
Okay.
To the show, so that then, even if it's a few months from now
sure. We can always
add folks. So
why did you name it Coursing?
Well,
it's a different name.
Yeah, what I had in mind was that I wanted a word that played. So there's educational courses.
Right.
There's the sense of the delectation or eating or enjoying, as in courses of a meal. And then there's this sense of hunting, as a dog coursing through a field. So I wanted the name to kind of carry that kind of multi-level. And it's divided into two parts. The first part is called reliquary. And I refer to that first part, and that word reliquary is in the last poem of that, and I refer to it as a poetic reliquary, a place where you save the bones, as it were, the sacred bones. And in a very real sense, that's what psychoanalysis and psychoanalytic thinking is a looking at those bones, bringing them out of the ossuary and looking at them. And the second part of it is listen to the bullfrog sing. And that comes from a poem that you probably have heard before, Monica, because some of the poems.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, and that one is a line from Pendle Hill Grace. And that was a poem I wrote many years ago my wife and I were attending a retreat at the Quaker Retreat Center in Pendle Hill, Pennsylvania. And
Pendle?
And I think it is more about what I have heard in the world. I believe, personally, when I think about religion, as you know, I'm a Spinozan. I believe that nature and science and God is what we don't yet know. And we're always striving to know more of God.
Yeah.
But the process of that knowing, to me, is being aware, listening. And Whether we're listening to the bullfrogs or the crickets or the silence.
Yeah.
It's the listening process. And so that's why I named the second half of the book that. And that's going to be out. And again, I'm really excited about it because I love writing poetry as well as, I mean, I mean, novels and a couple plays.
You've done a bit of everything, I believe.
I think I may actually have ADD. I really think because I can't focus on one. As soon as I start writing one thing, a voice comes along in the back of my head and says, "But wait a minute, you have to do this too."
It's probably been hiding there a long time, waiting for its turn to speak.
So my hope for, although you never know with that because I may have another voice, but my next project is going to be opera libretto that I'm trying to write with Uma, and it is based on the story of Lilith.
Oh, yes.
And I'm going to try and make it work in Nigeria. Now, Umar is Muslim, and they do not have a tradition of the story of Lilith in the Quran. So I'm hoping he'll bring some very, very interesting, fresh eyes to it. And that way I'll learn.
There's a lot of people that don't know about Lilith at all.
Right. Well, we'll do a thing about Lilith sometime, but
okay.
I want to be sure I have my take on film before I tell. But folks, you can always, one of the great things about the internet, go online and look up Lilith. And while you're at it, look up me.
I was going to ask you, we'll have the link, but the best way to see your works and everything is to go to your website, correct?
Oh, yeah. The best way to see all, the range is to go to my website. And of course, you can go on to onto Amazon to buy the books. I don't try and do my own fulfilling. For one thing, I got too many. And there are a couple, that are just available on Kindle because they're very short. They got a few 99-cent things. Just if you want to sample.
Yeah, try those out and you'll see why I praise Ken often. I don't think I will ever be the writer he is. And that's good because it makes him stand out and be special.
Well, let's be fair here, folks. Monica is, in addition to being quite a good writer, very good writer, she also is a very fine artist. And I can't even draw a stick man. And if you really want to see something kind of impressive, look at some of Monica's pastels, particularly, right, Monica?
Yes.
Yeah, she does some really wonderful.
Used to do oils, but they kind of burn up during the fire.
But she does some wonderful, wonderful animal portraits that just, I think
it's their eyes. They just get to me all the time. Well, thank you, Ken. I appreciate that. Listen, folks, I can't tell you how much I encourage you to, first of all, go to kennethweene.com and see what Ken's about there. He's got, oh gosh, he even has artwork.
Yeah, my wife's, not mine, my wife's.
Right, because he doesn't be stick people, as he said. No. But there's also blogs, his books, of course, and it's just a very, very enjoyable site to visit.
Thank you.
I encourage you to check it out. Well, Ken, I think it's time for us to go, and I'm going to play a little bit of something right after this once we end, so people will get a little bit of a peek into what you do.
Thank you.
And I'm so thrilled because you've been working years to get to this point where you could make the connections, you have the exposure, and I just support you all the way, and I know it's going to happen.
We hope. Folks, thanks so much for listening.
Take care. Bye-bye.